Good evening and welcome to Cohoes City School District Board of Education meeting tonight, March 5th. I'm going to call a meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, our emergency exits, there's two at the side here and one in the front. We would convene out front if there was an emergency. Could we please have a roll call?
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder. Here. Mrs. Gendron. Here. Mrs. Paradis.
Here.
Mr. Droz.
Here.
And Mrs. Geller.
I am here. At this time, I'll turn it over to Superintendent O'Shea for our district reports.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Tonight, I'd like to welcome Assemblymember John McDonald. John, thank you for coming to our board meeting. This is an annual event that we all look forward to. We thank you for all you do for the citizens of Cohoes and the greater community. We look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you, Peggy, and good evening to the board and those present. And, as Peg had mentioned, at least for the last 13 years that I've been in the assembly, I try to make it to all the school districts. Kind of brief the boards on what is going on or what's not going on in the building, right? And let's get right to it, the part that Stacy cares the most about, which is where we are with the money, right? At the end of the day, it's always about the money. Plain and simple. And you might recall last year, there were a lot of challenges. The governor proposed basically dropping a hold harmless provision, which didn't really impact us, per se, but impacted a lot of districts. It led to a whole rigmarole. That's probably the nicest word I could use. And we dealt with reinstating the hold harmless, but the provision was, hey, education community, formula's outdated. We need to do something. So the Rockefeller Institute, which is a public policy institute, which is nationally, it's for lucky, it's here in Albany. It's nationally renowned, headed up by a former budget director, Bob Magnet. They embarked on working with all the school districts, the BOCEs throughout the state, a several-month process of getting public feedback on what to do with updated information. And they came back with a policy recommendation back in end of November, early December, if I remember correctly, of which the governor chose to use most of, but not all of the recommendations. Actually, I would say part of, but not all the recommendations. The bottom line is, in this year's budget, which there's a significant increase in overall funding, the formula has been adjusted. Now, the formula, for those who don't know, for education, it's not a one-page document. It's usually a 54-page document with a variety of different elements that really kind of tries to address every single thing you could imagine that would happen in New York State. The way it worked out this year, as much as we're seeing a $1.5 billion increase in overall funding for schools, all 800 plus throughout the district, throughout the state, districts like Cohoes, districts like Troy, districts like Green Island were held at the helm. They did have the hold harmless. So we're seeing a 2% increase. What does that mean in dollars and cents? For Cohoes, it's about a $556,000 increase, which is not a symptom of violence. And I'm sure it sends more worries for my finance director here. We've been very fortunate the last couple of years, some significant increase, but to be clear, the increases were predicated on the fact that there was a lot of need. Cohoes is one of 13 districts throughout the state that falls into a high needs urban suburban district. Let me repeat that. We're one of 13 schools that falls into that high needs urban district. And for whatever reason, Glens Falls is in that category. I think it's Newburgh is in that category. There's some schools out on Long Island. Kind of didn't get the best deal in this process. So we're at a 2% increase. That's the floor. But that's the floor right now. So what are we doing about it? Well, I've kind of gathered with all the members, both sides of the aisle, both Senate and Assembly, saying, guys, as our opportunities to push for education changes in the budget, we should take on this one category. and push to at least double that to 4% to start. It costs the state about $18 million. Now, 18 million is a lot to me, I'm sure it's a lot to you, but in the grand scheme of a $32 billion education budget, it's something that's doable. We did conference education this afternoon as we're preparing our one house budget resolution, which is going to be introduced Monday night. It'll be passed next Thursday. It's really a statement of values. We are making other tweaks. This proposal that I pushed to deal with the 13 is kind of incorporated, but the truth of the matter is there's 150 assembly districts throughout the state of New York. So we got to try to worry just not about what John McDonald concerns about, but others. So the assembly is going to be adding another $236 million in funding. This is our proposal. So don't, it's not going to, please do not.
Don't write it down.
And the idea is, one factor that's in there is what's called the Commonwealth indicator. We're trying to, the government, we're trying to phase it in slowly as being phased out of the budget, and that way it actually brings more money to the table. So, as I always say to people every year, this is as bad as it's going to be. It can only get better from here. Other items that are important to mention that may not have a direct impact on money here, but has an impact on expenses there. There's always been a chronic issue with CTE educators. You know, we're recognizing that there are a lot of students that are better acclimated here for CTE, but the reality is we don't have enough educators to do it. So we've always capped no more than $30 million a year or $30,000 a year per salary. We're trying to add it to 60. That helps BOCES, which indirectly helps you because you can become students. We are trying to address that in our one house budget, which we never did before. So that's a positive sign. I know there's been over the past, since the pandemic, you know, because the teacher pipeline is still a little lean, it's a little shaky, and, you know, we have problems with subs, particularly. We've been waiving the retirement cap for teachers that are, you know, they have a cap of no more than 35,000 once they retire. And actually, the state union came to us and I said, you need help. I said, everyone's exhausted. So we are pushing again to extend it. It's not guaranteed yet. It's really one of those things that's the last thing in the budget. Why, I don't know, because every year the governor says we're not doing any further. And then at some point it happens. So no guarantee, but I think it's going to happen. I know that Cohoes has been one of the early adopters of UPK. That has its strengths and its weaknesses, right? With the weaknesses, of course, is that while we adopted that as a per seat revenue is still at the same numbers. Meanwhile, late adopters don't have any seats, getting paid more per seat. We're trying to reform that. That's a challenge, but the other issue is in regards to making sure that if there's going to be a lottery, I don't know if there's a lottery here or not anymore, is there? For UPK?
We've had to have it for our 3-year-olds, but not our 4-year-olds recently.
Well, to make sure that it's numbers of students who have access to it. So that's an issue that I know when we met with the BOCES, that's the capital region BOCES, as opposed to the Western BOCES that are wishy. They really made that a priority. I don't think what else is critical in the education world. I will say, one house budget resolution is done this Thursday. Then we have these conference committees, which looks like we're doing something, which is really just a procedural thing. Then it'll be the last 2 weeks of March where it starts to get back and forth and trade-offs start happening and things like that. Technically, I say this every year, and I'll say it again this year, there's no reason why the budget shouldn't be done by April 1st to give you plenty of time for planning. There's going to be a few policy items that are unrelated. I said there's 3 things this year. I've been saying 3 things. One of them was the foundation. If we get it right, that will not hold up the budget. I think we're going to get something right. Because you can't just take a formula that's 20 years old and just expect it to work like magic. So we're going to have to move on to this, and quite frankly, I think that helps a community like Cohoes. The other 2 items are unrelated, but since aren't only sports around here, just watching what goes on at all, but you'll hear about this. discovery reform. Discovery is part of the criminal justice system. There were changes made years ago to help even playing field, but unfortunately, particularly in the boroughs and the city, they can't seem to prosecute cases quick enough and people are getting charges. So we want to fix it. We want to make sure that everyone has a fair opportunity to trial, but at the same token, we want to make sure that people aren't just walking off as a district attorney's office, which usually doesn't get funded partly by the county governments. People aren't getting, we want to make sure everyone has a day in court and let the results speak for themselves, right? But sadly, counties don't tend to support funding for the district attorneys, and that doesn't help in regards to dealing with the prosecution case. It's one of those little Albany secrets that nobody talks about. And the other thing, which is, I think, a serious issue, but one that needs to be addressed, is involuntary commitment, particularly for people with behavioral health issues, whether it's mental health, substance use. Interesting enough, we have a lot of people, most of the problems, you follow the posts, you'll see these pictures of these people going crazy in subways in New York, and some of my colleagues think it's perfectly fine, and I think it's a problem, because regardless of whatever spectrum of the world we live in, somebody acting out like that, it's not normal. They need help. They need to be stabilized. They need to go someplace. So that is going to be an issue, particularly in the minority community. They do not like it. They think it's another way of going backwards. I try to share with my colleagues that I don't look at this as a criminal justice issue. I look at it as a health issue. Someone's got a problem. And I don't care who you are. No one likes it. It needs to be fixed. One way or the other. So that will be a fight to the end. The discovery reform, hopefully not, the Attorney General and all the district attorneys in New York City are fully on board, which never happens when it comes to these type of things. So it's just a matter of getting a few members to antics. But involuntary commitment is a serious issue. I mean, when you're taking somebody and putting them on ice, that's a serious issue. It's not like nice when our kids in timeout for 15 minutes, but it's the same concept. He didn't calm down, right? We all know this. As parents, you all know what we're talking about. Think about the people who've been living as a child in life out of control. They do some things that if they had their senses about them, they probably wouldn't. So there you go. Here's my summary. I have more happy to answer any questions.
I have some questions.
I hope I have some answers.
Well, you mentioned a couple of different things. You know, talking about the budget in general, you know, we as school districts are reliant on public funding, you know, through our local government, state, federal. Have we thought, or have there been any conversations about any unintended or unexpected consequence of any kind of tariff increases that we might see trickle down? Our budgets are set in May for an entire school year, and we don't have any way to raise funds. We don't have goods or services. We don't have anything that we sell to increase. We're already seeing a 9% increase in some of our municipal services. We're seeing increases across the board in utilities. You know, I could go on and on with inflation increases. And for us, you know our community well enough to know that the increases in poverty here are very challenging for we as a board to sit and even think about 2%. 2% seems like, oh, it's 2%, but for us, we know how that's going to impact our neighbors. So I just was wondering if there's been any conversation on what does that look like? And I know we don't have a crystal ball, but at the same time, you know, it brings up some concern if, you know, a couple months down the road, we have unintended expenses that now are we talking mid-year layoffs? So like that makes us all, I think, very nervous.
Yes, actually, two things came to mind that I forgot to mention first, which will lead into the answer to your question.
Okay.
As you know, the cell phone policy has been a priority for the governor. I participated in a couple of forums with different school districts throughout the summer last year with the governor. I think we've gotten to a spot where we want to make sure that districts still have more control of how they want to deal with this. We want to make sure that you have resources. There's about $15 million set aside. That won't cover all of it, so we're going to have to work on that. But the truth of the matter is, as you know, I've been married to a teacher for 37, well, she's been teaching for 37 years, I've been married for 32. And I hear about it literally every day. These kids are so distracted. And therefore, the amount of money we're spending on education, whether it's taxpayers, the state, the teachers are putting up with, there needs to be an opportunity for these kids to really pay attention and engage. So that is going to happen one way or the other. Budget. And, the governor was smart about this. She really made sure that NYSU was on board in the beginning, and they've been very much engaged. But at the same token, we want to make sure that districts have a way to weigh in on it. And it's still going to be work for you guys, so I'll apologize up front. Number two, when you mentioned, I forgot about the fact that kids' meals in school, everyone's going to be covered now. I think here in Cohoes, I think pretty much everyone has been covered for years. That has not been the case in other parts of the state. So that's not inexpensive. That's probably another couple $100 million. But that's what triggered me to remind me about the fact that you mentioned the tariffs. There's two things with Washington. We really just do not know what they're going to do, right? As much as it's only been 40 days since the president's been in office. There's talk about disbanding the education department, which I'm a little bit interested in what that means. Because there have been over time some decent programs that came out that really kind of actually up the ante and provided for a stronger education. Most of the education funding we have is through the state. So whether the education department is there or not at the national level, I think it should be there, but besides, if that goes away, we're still on the hook for most of the education costs in the state, period. Tariffs are going to be a little more interesting to see what happens. Where it triggered the memory is mostly, I've been meeting with the farmers. The farmers are very concerned. This time of year, we're getting all our apples from Mexico. And it's going to be a problem. And it's going to run its course. What we're really concerned about, that's not directly related here, but like, you deal with Medicaid, right? We've had more than our fair share of only audits over the years, and they're not fair to anybody. They just go after money. Depending on how they address Medicaid is going to make a determination whether we're coming back. The last thing we want is the legislature, once we leave in June, coming back anytime before January. Because we're not coming back for any good reason. We're coming back because there's a crisis. Went through this in 2001. I was through it in 2008. It's not good. And that's when gap elimination adjustment came in. And that's when, significantly, millions of dollars were taken away from school districts. And we've never gotten it back. And if it happens again, it's going to, so hopefully they're thoughtful about what they're trying to do with the federal government. I can't make a judgment on that right now. I will say this. No, it's not, it should not be a political issue. Louisiana is just as poor as we were. They're as red as we are. I look more purple these days, but no one thinks we're really low. We're actually becoming more and more purple. But the truth of the matter is, Congress, with the narrow margins, is really going to have to be very careful on it. There are 6 or 7 members in the majority that represent the state. I know them all. Actually, very decent people. They understand the impact of what's being talked about, but you also have some individuals in Congress, particularly in the House, that are extraordinarily conservative. I mean, if they had their druthers, government would be gone, just gone. Some days, I understand that's not a bad idea, but the truth of the matter is, we have a basic responsibility to make sure that everyone has an opportunity for education, has an opportunity to make sure that they can do something to make themselves sustainable in the future. And that's where I think our goals are. So I'm hoping we're not back, but if we are coming back, batten down the hatches. So as I say every year, but I say even more this year, and I was with April Park was in the city yesterday. I said, don't get excited and do not start adding new programs, because we just do not know what's going to happen. And the way they're going, they were all gung ho to address everything by March 14th. They have to raise the debt ceiling again. which has been punted for the last 8 years. It just keeps getting punted and punted. They're gonna do it again, barely. But they're gonna move it to September 30th, so we probably will not know what's happening until October or November, unless something magically happens. Who knows, it could. I just hope that there's well on the impact for everybody in the United States.
Yeah, thank you. The other things I wanted to say are not really questions, it's more just advocacy pieces that, things that you brought up, you talked about the waiver for some of our retirees. We're heavily reliant on our retirees, in filling positions in interim capacities, part-time capacities, and even, some who are here on an almost full-time basis to just help support us. And, we're better to get that support than somebody who knows our district and has retired from here. So, I do hope that when they look at that, they do take into consideration that, there's definitely a need out there still, and we're using it at this point.
Certainly the staff have always had questions about it, particularly CSD. I said it's been very helpful in this conversation. We have CSC members, make sure that they're comfortable. There is always a concern, legitimately so, that this would be used to replace people. That's not the case here. Not the case at all. It used to be 27,000. I actually planted the bill and got it passed to raise it to 35 about 4 or 5 years ago. We'd like to raise it more, but in the meantime, we just need to make sure that we're not displacing new opportunities for jobs. To your point, you're just filling in for the.
Yes. I mean, many of our teachers are teaching above their teaching capacity at this point. It's not even, we can't find folks to fill spots. So, yeah. UPK, you said that you, brought that up as far as like the per pupil amounts and who gets reimbursed, and us being one of the earlier adopters of it. Some of the flexibility pieces are also very hard for us. Peggy had mentioned we have a lottery for our 3-year-olds, but we can't fill all of our 4-year-old spots. So, that's kind of a thing for us where we're losing out by not getting seats, children in seats, but at the same time, it's the same allocation. We have the same money, but we can't be flexible with that money. And that really hurts us because some years it is the 3s and some years it is the 4s, but because that money can't be interchanged, we have kids that miss out and we have empty seats. So that's just something to bring up. You had talked about criminal justice reform. I know that we as a community are really struggling with having students who are younger and younger committing crimes and having no accountability. There's nothing really that we can do. We're seeing that it's increasing in both frequency and in severity. And it's really difficult because, I feel that our law enforcement does a phenomenal job. They do the best that they can do, but we're very limited because we don't have any accountability, and it's very hard, very difficult to get anybody on pins anymore, or to get any help from CPS because they are so overwhelmed. And we know this, we try, and we have so many programs that we're putting in place and, trying to look at short-term, long-term goals, for what we can do to support our community best. But that it is something that we have seen an increase in, and certainly a struggle with it getting younger and younger.
So a couple of things that you're not wrong in what you're saying by your imagination. I represent Albany, Rensselaer, and Saratoga. It's not an issue in Rensselaer, Saratoga. It's not an issue. It has been an issue in Albany. And it boils down to is the district attorney that prosecutes crimes. And I talk to the cops, particularly in Albany. And in the past, they let things go in the city. They let things go in the city of Cohoes, let things go in the city of Waterloo. They dealt with things in Gilbert, Delaware. That's it. New district attorney can tell you it's a different approach. District attorney has a lot of sway in the process. It involves more work. Back to my earlier comment about the counties making sure that they're supporting the budgets of the district attorneys and the public. The other thing that's important too is that from the state's perspective, we were slow for services to follow. So more programs do need to be in place. They are coming on board. The city of Cohoes is participating in LEAD now, which is a program that helps with diversion of individuals. Maybe not throwing them in jail, but getting them into a program that's going to help them. This is a program that we fund. Cohoes Water League is now part of that because this is where we have our challenges. But same token, we also have brought on more facilities. The juvenile detention facility is finally expansion, which is taking way too long, taking 3 years. It's finally expanding, which is going to give the judges and the district attorneys more options to once again get these kids in the same spot. Get them, because the parents are throwing their hands in the air. If they're in English, they're throwing their hands in the air. They've got the point. These kids have gotten so challenged. And get them in a place where they can get services, they can get support. And by the way, run through the justice system. They were guilty of what they did. Now, from my perspective, we hold an 18-year-old or an 18-year-old accountable if they've got a legal gun, they go right to jail. But a 17-and-a-half-year-old, particularly, I've had South Bend involved in RL for a long period of time. Don't have it now, but I still deal with it. Those kids it wasn't being pushed to put them in a facility. It was allowing them to be back. And quite honestly, that's a failure of the system, but you need a district attorney who's going to work hard at it. And the new district attorney is making a commitment to deal with that, which is important. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. The last piece was the mental health piece. I'm certainly not talking about, involuntary committal for students, but we do struggle. And we have more and more increasing mental health needs. Again, we're putting programs in place at the district level, but sometimes it does get to the point where this is not the most appropriate environment. And we also struggle with finding those placements. They're becoming fewer and fewer because the need is higher. And so again, not a question, just a point of concern. I know that, there's talk about building more supports towards adults, but I feel like we need to do that for kids too, because it had to start somewhere. And we know early intervention is the best. And so with that said, I just really want to thank you for being here. I, appreciate you taking your time out and dealing with me. But honestly, what you're telling us is good things, that this is not necessarily things that we have heard before. And so it does make me feel hopeful that there is some help out there.
We're validating things that they're not figments of imagination. They are real issues. There's a lot about, and admittedly, we're not going to be able to correct everything.
Yeah.
I remember probably the first month I was mayor, I remember like, what the heck is going on? And the assistant chief at the time, Jim Moore, said, just remember one thing, every day we do. Sometimes things happen you don't know anything about. Thank God nobody gets hurt. Other days, somebody just takes the wrong step in the wrong direction, and people act out, and bad things happen. We live at the ages every day, but put proper supports in, maybe we can minimize some of those. But you never remember what doesn't happen. You only remember what does.
That's right. And I mean, we live in a wonderful community, and our support and our teachers and, the relationship that we have with the city themselves, it's not something for me to complain about for sure. We definitely, I think, take the steps that we need to try and support some of these challenges. At some point though, you just need to ask for help, so.
No, and listen, you're all here for one reason. You want the best for every kid in this. It's admirable. I appreciate it. I know it's not easy. The pay is great.
Okay.
But at the same token, you know what, this is my community. I want to see it thrive, continue to grow too.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I think you've covered everything.
Okay.
Go now. Thank you.
So at this point, Stacy has the clicker. Is that what you're saying? Okay, so at this point, we are going to begin our budget presentations. I wanted to just fill you in a bit on the budget development process. As you know, we meet with our building leadership teams, our principals, our teacher leaders and other content area representatives, and our directors as part of a needs assessment process, getting feedback, the departments, the BLTs from their, entire buildings. And that's taken place. I'm going to have, Stacy's going to talk a little bit about our approach and then talk about our budget committee process today.
Yeah, so our budget approach, we build the budget from scratch, so we have a zero-based approach. We do start with the revenues because the revenue drives what the growth will be for the budget overall. So we're heavily dependent on state aid. So that's the majority of where our funding is. And then the second piece would be the levy. So we talk about that early on, so we know exactly what the bottom line is going to be. But we start from zero and we work our way up. The line item budget is shared early. It's tentative. It was just shared with the board before the weekend, as well as the summary of the return on investment. So the return on investments for any new staffing or any new programs that are introduced to the budget committee are summarized. And this particular year, as Assemblymember McDonald mentioned, the growth in state aid is minimal. This is the tightest budget we've had in a long time. So a big piece of that is the growth in expenses. So we've seen that in the current year. Transportation costs are increasing at a rate that it's difficult for us to keep up with, based off of our McKinney-Vento students as well as our out-of-district placements. Utility costs, so we've had the trash, phone, gas, electricity, all the utilities are spiking. Health insurance, so we're going to see a 10% increase in health insurance. So all of these costs, most of them are millions of dollars. And they're growing at a rate that our revenue isn't matching that growth. So that's a challenge for us, obviously. So again, we're mindful of the needs, but you will see we won't be able to meet the needs. Everything that was asked for, we won't be able to accommodate. But you'll see that. So the process is transparent. Everybody will report on basically what the needs are. And then at the end of the process, we'll see what the recommendations are.
And we have had some budget committee meetings and where we have gone through the ROIs and have had some, initial discussions about the priorities and recommendations. So tonight, we have the pleasure of our first presentation at the elementary level, and our elementary principals. You're not coming up together, correct? Are you one at a time? Or are you coming up together? Okay, you're coming on a, do what Jacqueline says, come on together.
Jacqueline says, always.
And to lead us off, Jacqueline DeCero, principal of Vance Pike Grade School.
Before I start, I just want to mention that when we get to the second slides that have our enrollment numbers on all three of our buildings, you will see a column in there that says projected numbers for E&O students. So we did put those in there. We know that no decision has been made at this point, and I do want to make sure you know that tomorrow afternoon at 12 o'clock, we are having our parent focus meeting with our email parents at 12 o'clock. The three of us will be there at Harmony Hill. We've secured translators as well, as that was requested. And we're going to talk to the parents, let them know that this is an idea that we are considering, and ask them how they feel about it, what they see are challenges, and how we could help them if we were to move forward with the challenges that they see. So that is going to happen tomorrow afternoon. Okay, great. Okay, so at Vance Pike Grade School, what are we proudest this year? Kindergarten, first to second grade, we are all implementing foundations. So nice consistency for phonics. The teachers, my kindergarten, first, and second grade teacher, also use this as their PLC, which is really nice. So they meet every month. They are talking about foundations, where each of them are. They're talking about how they're, what their instruction looks like, and helping one another, because this is the first year. So it's going very well with that. We've also implemented GamesWeb as our progress monitoring tool. And I will tell you that our AIS teachers, our reading teacher, is very happy with this. It is something we have used in the past, so it wasn't all that new to them. But they just like that we now have something where we kind of didn't have anything for a few years. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. So it's nice to have that consistency. Our building, and again, this comes from my staff, they really wanted me to put on here the collegiality and professionalism of our staff. And Advanced Guide being a small building, one section of each grade level, that's really important because they're working together all the time. And the support staff, the permanent subs, the resource teachers, they're those classroom teachers. There's not like, I don't want to work with that teacher next year, so can you put me someplace else? Like, we're it with each other. So being able to get along with one another and work really well for our students is so important. And our staff really feels very proud of how we get along at the building. And then the professional development in foundations, the interreading, writables, and iReady. I think this is the most professional development all kind of at the same time we've had in a long time for our teachers. And I think they really were happy that we were able to provide that with them to get them more comfortable for their instruction. And then here are my numbers, my current enrollment here. You can see that most of the, again, with only one section, all you gotta do is follow, go down. But there are a couple of classrooms that we know already. I have 3 kindergartners we know already who are going to be advanced ed next year because they've already moved. So, I adjusted those numbers here for my first grade, but included the projected, if the ENL are here, this would be my total number. So you can see, again, my numbers kind of just go straight across. No big, huge change or fluctuation in any of the classrooms. My students with disability numbers, again, you can see they're really not too high. My 5th grade is the highest with 4 in it. All the other classrooms are 2 or less. And this 2 is not going to be advanced guidance first grade next year because both of them are moving to out of my building. So first grade will have 0, second grade will have 0, and then here. But I do want to preface saying that my kindergarten with kindergarten SC, we're looking at what's coming into kindergarten. So there could be a little higher number here, and we're trying to think of some creative ways of how we might be able to handle that. So stay tuned for what might happen there in kindergarten. Yeah, and that's about it. I do have the 3 self-contained classrooms, and they can go up to 12. Right now, we have 12, one is full, one's at 11, and one is 10. But that's where we are. And then our needs assessment, what my building would like, and my staff said, one of the number 1 things is the 0.5 math AIS. You should know that we had 1.0 that was grant funded, that went away this year. So we are struggling with that because I do have a reading person who is strictly reading, like she can't do AIS, so she can't do well, she's a reading teacher. So I do have another person who is AIS, and she does reading and math, but the teachers are feeling it with that loss of the 1.0. We don't feel we need a total 1.0 math AIS, but a half-time, 0.5, we really feel would be just enough for us to meet our needs in the building. Substitute teachers, as Mr. McDonald mentioned and Margaret mentioned, we are blessed at Advanced Guide this year, the first time in a long time. We've got 2 fantastic permanent subs, but when other people, we have multiple people who are calling out and they're putting into the BOE system, we're not getting anyone from BOE. So even though we have those 2 great people, we have them doing lots of things, they're usually, putting out those fires on a daily basis. So substitute teachers. Professional development, we have provided so much as we stated, but they are still looking for some professional development in the standards-based reading. With our report cards, Ms. O'Shea is pulling together the report card committee back again to look at the report cards. There's lots of standards on our report cards. So the teachers are looking for some more in that area. If you were to get the ENL students back in our buildings, we would need some professional development for our teachers. And I think with Ms. O'Shea, Mr. Perry has a teacher, as I mentioned a month ago, has a teacher who's doing some great job up there at Harmony Hill, providing some extra help for them and working with Arbor. I think we would absolutely be able to provide what teachers need, along with some materials and supplies that they need for their classrooms, books, iPads, and that kind of thing. And then Generation Genius software. This is something my fifth grade teacher has right now. I had her kind of show it to the staff at our January faculty meeting. We did at our faculty meeting for 2 months, we looked at the science standards, and then I asked them to, per grade level, look at the standards and then look at your science kit. And then the next meeting, we came back and discussed, okay, what standards are not being addressed by our science kits? So, and there was some at every grade level. So we said, okay, how are we going to fill those gaps? And we really felt like this could be one of those ways we could fill that gap, is by having this resource for us. And it's great, the fifth grade teacher used it now. She was out for 2 days and she was like, this is fantastic even for when I'm substitute. She's able to, what is the topic we're doing in science right now? And it came out with articles, give me 10 questions that go along with that article, and we had it all ready for her. So it's a really great resource. The teachers, when they said, they're like, you can have this right now? And she's like, yeah. So that is something else we would like to discuss. Any questions?
Currently, all our fifth and sixth grade teachers have Generation Genius, across the district. So that is something we're looking at.
Okay.
It's not just the fifth grade teacher being difficult.
It's not.
Listen.
And I'm
Need to go.
sure she would be a great person for the rest of that building on having this. She's very good.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Vance Bay or Jacqueline? Mr. Perry from Harmony Health.
And thank you. Again, these are goals are from our teachers, from our needs assessments. A couple of things that we're really, really proud of. Our faculty said we collaborate on most every decision that's made. If we have something big that's coming up, we'll have what's called a focus meeting. Like, for example, next week early, we're going to have a focus meeting on Grandparents' Day. We had Grandparents' Day last year. We got crushed. We had breakfast with grandparents, and we had, I would say, about 270 to 290 grandparents there. Too much, and we had a line out the front door for donuts. So we were talking about a DLT, and we said, okay, we have to have a focus meeting. So I'll have everybody's input. One of the things that we're talking about is maybe not serving the donuts. So we'll see.
A donut to go.
Yeah, a donut to go. That's right. On the way out. Classroom, you never know what the teachers will with that focus meeting. Classroom math centers. We have a couple of I've got a couple of kindergarten classrooms that have been doing centers forever. And they've got everybody else sold on math centers. Math centers allow you to differentiate throughout your class. They open up with a group lesson, and then they break up into centers. Most everybody now is doing math centers in the building. Continued development of systems for ELL students. We have a third grade teacher that has had a lot of ELL experience, and now she's spreading it out. Since we went from one class of ELL to two classrooms of ELL, she did a lot of PBM throughout this year already, and really helped our teachers quite a bit. And they're also going out to our workplace too. Science of reading, we had a lot of teachers that went through the SUPI New Paltz, got their credentials for science of reading, so that's a lot of discussions in their PLCs and so forth. Use of motivators to encourage. Some of our, we've got some of the stodgy ones that don't want to do motivators. They say, they should be able to do the iReady on their own. But now we're getting to the point where we're having a lot of contests, like fourth grade last week at our assembly. We talked about who won the iReady, the motivator for the month. They got to fill in a heart, the most hundreds on their lessons or 90s on their lessons. They won I think they had a pajama party this Monday. So, they're really seeing a lot of movement in their iReady growth by having that little bit of an incentive, a little bit of a motivator. And we are very thankful that we didn't have a lot of new programs, so we're getting a lot of refinement and with the current programs. Like Jacqueline said, we've had some really excellent PD on some of our current programs, and we're very, very happy that we're not, they're very, very happy that we didn't throw a lot of new things at them this year. This is my eye chart. We're a little bit different because obviously we have our ENLs, our current ENLs in here right now this year, and then all of our sections. We have this great big blurb, a very big blob of kids right in the middle there, and that's working its way through the building. I can remember seeing those as kindergartners and say, boy, that's going to follow right through the building. Sure enough, it's following its way over through the building. So we've got these two sections. Currently, it's the second and third grade with sections of 4, and that's going to follow through for our. Before we get over to this gray section, this is if they go to the home schools, this is as it would be right now. We just continued that for next year. So we're thinking about moving those 4 down to 3rd grade and 4th grade. 3rd grade, we may pull one of those back because one of the things in the next slide you'll see that we really, really want is a K-1-2 math AIS person. So if we move forward with the ENL to the home schools, we'll have room to be able to take one of those sections away and cost effectively be able to have a K-1-2 math AIS person. We still might be able to do it. I'd like to see a couple of these, my enrollment go down a little bit first. So that's what that asterisk is there for that 4. That could still go to a 3, but that's 10. You can see my total numbers right now are 384. Next year, I'm projecting if we stay with everything else, we got quite a few 5th graders this year. Our 5th grade numbers are going down, so we're losing numbers from other ENLs. So or ELLs. And then if we do go to the home schools, we go down to 336 roughly. Again, these are projections. It all depends on what bus stops in 77. If the bus stops with 3rd graders or bus stops with 2nd graders, we get those lumps again. So we're projecting for next year. A couple of things that we're looking for, again, like I said earlier, we have Bob Keith, who does a phenomenal job in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. He co-teaches with teachers with math. It's a math AIS person. He also pulls a bunch of singlets out and groups out as well. He's also ventured upstairs to a couple of 2nd grade classrooms, but again, his time is really not enough time to go upstairs. So we really would like to get a K2 and math AIS person because we've got a lot of it. Gone to the days where it's just operational. Now, since all the math is becoming a reading test, we've got to say, okay, not only do we have to be able to figure out what operation to use, but then also use the operation. So it's a lot more to it. We'd like them to get a little bit more skills when they go downstairs in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Our math numbers will get up. So we're looking for that. Substitute teachers, you're going to hear that from all 3 of us. Again, like Jacqueline said, we've been blessed this year with 3 or 4, depending on when Route 4 is here, with building subs. We've also been really blessed with a couple of veterans that have come back and working in Tremblay. They've been stalwarts in our building forever, and they continue to come back every year. So we're very thankful for that. Foundations for 3rd grade, we've got foundations in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. We're looking at the possibility of bringing it in 3rd. A lot of that happens because we've got kids that come to us in 1st and 2nd grade, mid-year, or transfer in that might not have foundations background from kindergarten. Chromebook cards, we have first K-1-2, we bought Chromebook cards for everybody, and it's an organizational wonder. It's lovely. It's a little bitty card. We found that if they have to go anywhere, then you go downstairs and it's just a mass of wires. So we've been talking about it, and we're looking to purchase parts for downstairs as well, the small transportable parts. That allows them, if they want to bring their whole class to the commons, or bring the whole class to the cafeteria, they can bring that whole part with them and just bring it right on over. Additional TCIS training, for the fact, that's a de-escalation. The first day, day and a half now, TCIS is a lot of the discussion piece. And people who have gone through TCIS training have loved it, and we use it. I utilize it just about every single day. And a lot of the faculty staff, it's the word's getting around, and it's really a great discussion piece. Great, something a lot more people are interested in being trained. So great to get on that. Locking cabinets for those rooms that are not furnished already. The best thing that ever happened this year is we converted 2 locker rooms into classrooms. The worst thing they ever did is accidentally left the furniture out in the hallway. And 2 of the pieces of furniture in each classroom were these lovely rolling carts that are lockable. Teachers walked by and saw and said, I need that. And all of a sudden we figured, okay, there's quite a few rooms in our building that don't have lockable storage. A union piece is to have lockable storage, and you have to have something. Some of our desks are broken, some things. So we're looking into pricing out some lockable cabinets for the classrooms that don't have a survey them first. See how many rooms need lockable storage. And a lot of times too, there's people in the building after school. They just want to make sure that, and if the cleaners there are going through cleaning, and sometimes they're locked, sometimes they're unlocked, we want to make sure that they're secure. Also, switching some of the door locks. We've got some general areas like the back of the room, like library, where if we have a lockdown, I don't want to have a specific key. I'll have a generic key, like our storage room A. Anybody's key will put storage room A. I want to be able to have anybody that's in the faculty room, anybody that's in the anybody that's in the cafeteria or the library to be able to just go out there, use their key, lock it up, and go in and hide. So those are a few of the things that we're working.
Yeah, before questions, if I could just mention two things, and thank you, Mr. Perry. So we've had 54 staff members trained to date in TCIS. It's a 3.5-day training. Rachel's planning another training in the spring and in summer, with the anticipation of having close to 100 staff members trained. Part of the model is to have a turnkey trainer in each building. We currently have one at Harmony in the high school. So we're looking at having one added this year to the middle school, and then, working through that turnkey trainer model for all of our 5 buildings. And I wanted to mention just a little bit of something so the needs assessment are at the building level when we meet with the building teams. But I just want to assure you that if a good idea that we think will benefit all of our students comes up through one building, then it's something that the elementary principals, although it might not be on the needs assessment, it's something that the discussions then happen. So for example, foundations for 3rd, there are some other districts that are doing that in 3rd grade. So reaching out, I know Mr. Perry is going to make a contact, reach out, find out how it's working, and then have that conversation with 3rd grade across the district. So I just wanted to let you know that. But again, since this is organic and coming from the buildings, you might see some different things on slides, but we all, the principals meet regularly and really share the ideas going forward.
One last thing, the door locks that's already being dealt with, Bill Darcy and I are already getting together to get it to change those ports out. So that's already being done.
I don't have a specific question, but as you're just speaking on that, we have AIS twice. I'm wondering if you at some point can just share with the board how many AIS teachers are at each of the buildings. We have the enrollment just so that we can have an idea of what that more is equitable to the district.
So I will share that in the update. I can tell you that in terms of math AIS, I know Mr. Perry mentioned he has 1 teacher. Mr. Bird has a half of a 0.5 math AIS. And Jacqueline, do you have any math AIS? Just a little? a little bit. That's current for the math. The rest of the AIS is reading. But we will definitely, I'll share that by building.
Yeah, I mean, you guys just shared out your data chart, so that would
Yeah.
be, that would be
Yeah.
kind of a nice thing for us to know.
Yeah, including us consultant teachers as well, because I know you might recall Mr. Bird went to a little bit of different model last year, so we'll share that in that.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
I just heard my name, but I don't know what you said after. So now I'm totally,
And now I'm going to
that's not what you were saying.
introduce Mr. Bird, principal of Avon Lansing Elementary School.
So first of all, I think it's important, all three of your elementary schools are talking about the community that we've all built in our own buildings. Jackie mentioned it. Mark just mentioned it. That's the first thing that came up as well. We work really hard at Avon Lansing to create a supportive community. Ourselves, we call ourselves a family, and when new teachers come in, it takes them a while to figure that out, and it's not long afterwards that they realize that's what we need. So we support each other. Y'all helped us last year by letting us start a reset room. This was actually our first full year having a resource room in place, and Miss Candy at the far end is our new security monitor. She's been wrapped into not only keeping the building secure, but also working in the reset room. It's there on the run. You can call Miss Candy to help us corral. The next two really have to do with Julie, our coach from BOCES, who has been amazing in helping us with professional development. I had 3 grade levels last year work on the summer with Julie to help us devise making better win decisions for our 1 time year. And then Julie's been working with us as well all throughout the school year. We're also really proud of what we've been doing with our families as well outside of the building, inviting families in for breakfast throughout the year. Our PTO has released them. We're proud of what they've done. Common boards is just our teachers realize how important the common boards are. We ask them at the beginning of every day to put up what the goals are going to be for ELA, math, science, social studies, and WIT time. We also ask them to put their schedules on the common board. So if somebody walks in, we know where they are if they're not in the room, or what they're doing the next time. If I ask a teacher to step out to work with a child that's in crisis, I know what the rest of the day is going to look like. In there, it's a brilliant idea that somebody can help with. And then probably the most important one is the last one, probably should have put first. We have struggled for years at Avon Lansing be fit for students to come in first thing in the morning. We've been short staffed. We've had staff that weren't dedicated to our building. We've worked for a long time with that. Over the past year, we have 3 night cleaners that Avon Lansing is their school. That to me is a big difference. We started with, can't remember their names.
The good egg?
Yeah, no, like, yeah.
Booker. We have,
To us this year, he's great.
we have Tammy Messier.
When Tammy came, Tammy started working in the cafeteria, serving our kids lunches, fell in love with our kids, had the opportunity for about 4 months, worked both. She would work in the cafeteria, go home, take a nap, and then come clean the building. And when she decided to tip over, one of the things that I remember she said to us, she walked right up to my face and said, "This is my building. Nobody's gonna mess up." And that's been the tipping point. She, Booker, and
Miss Beth.
Jeff worked together very, very. So we're very happy with them. Needed to make sure that used to show up on our complaint side, so we thought it was important. Here are numbers. I do want to mention something interesting about kindergarten. We're thinking that there may be 0 students with special needs coming into our general population, but we're overwhelmed with the number of kids coming into kindergarten that are self-contained. You will hear probably later, Karen Renesky is going to talk about the possibility of someplace in the district adding another self-contained classroom for little guys. Right now, my self-contained, stealing her thunder, but my self-contained classroom for little guys is pretty much divided. There are out of the 12 kids, there are 7 or 8 that are really functioning with skills, and then whatever the rest are, much more challenging, and really those 4 or 5 kids take up most of the time of the staff in that building. It would be great in our something in that classroom. It would be great if we could focus more on the kids that are really functioning and give them more opportunity to work. So that's just a quick anomaly. We have, as Jackie mentioned, we have talked about who are ENL students and where they would be. And those are our sections. We are dropping our small 5th grade class, and so we have increased our numbers slightly starting next year. Of course, it all depends on how many kindergartners show up. We haven't started numbers yet. Thanks. Substitute teachers, I've mentioned it several times when I had the opportunity to talk to you. First of all, what I don't talk about often is almost every day, one of my special area staff, one of my special ed teachers, is more than likely covering the classroom and actually doing his work job, which is frustrating for our union friends, but it's also a challenge because our kids aren't getting the services that they need for health and safety issues. I have a classroom of 18 kids, I have somebody in there. That drives us crazy. But the other part that I'll bring up again when we get to professional development is not having substitutes really limits us in being able to provide the professional development. I could say 3 years ago, when we were first on the list, I had 3 permanent subs in our building. We were running professional development almost every month. I mean, high quality, good professional development was improving everybody in the building. We were able to do that because we had subs. There are a couple ideas even that actually Ms. O'Shea didn't come up here, classroom visits.
Some rounds.
Lesson rounds, right? The lesson rounds were probably the best professional development we ever had. Didn't require any money except substitute teachers to let our teachers go to other classrooms and have conversations about what they see. So substitute teachers got focused. Mr. Perry mentioned this, and we moved to more and more one-to-one Chromebooks. We don't have any place to put them all in. We'll do 17 wires, and long extension cords, and it's kind of crazy. But the classroom station tower is running probably about $2,000 to $3,000, which we have to start thinking about to make it. That's also kind of a health and safety issue. I was really proud of my staff when they had a conversation with my DL team, when they had a conversation with Ms. O'Shea and Stacy, because they were starting to think globally about what do we need as a whole for professional development, and where do we need to go. It's kind of audacious, but where do we need to go as a district to move us all forward? We'd like to get back to Teach Like a Champion. They are also concerned about poverty, trauma, and trauma-informed strategies. We had not yet heard from Dr. Tim about skilled schools, which we've been selected to start working on. We're having that conversation. So we are meeting those needs, we hope. We find out that our new teachers are not coming in with the strengths we'd like them to have. We have a really good onboarding program for their first year, and then it falls off. And so we have found if we are going to try and take our second-year teachers and kind of bump them up a little bit. So our staff is asking me to think about that as well. And then one of the things we've been talking about, and you'll see this as well when I get to the very next slide, is we have all of our special ed students in one classroom in our 3 levels, right? Kids that need help in reading or and we have a special educator that moves in there. We really want to take the time to help those 2 teachers work together. So there's an hour or more when I have a professional special educator in the classroom, and sometimes they are the 2 professionals. One is watching the other one teach. They're supporting our kids. We're working on that. But I would really like to upgrade so that everybody's involved in the education of all of our students when I have 2 professionals. All right, I've lost sleep over, do I call these my wants or my needs? I'm going to start with, I still believe I need one more special education teacher. We've worked for several years at having one special educator at every grade level. We've been down one for about a year and a half. I would like to ask to bring that back. To make my building to work the way I'd like it to, we've kind of been working on hand with this, where we're still not providing services for full services for our fifth graders. I have 3 fifth graders that are now doing their special class, but we haven't found a way yet to get teachers in as a consultant.
If I could mention, that has been posted and we are
Absolutely, we're
using staff.
not saying we're closing our eyes, but we're stealing staff from other grade levels. We're patching in holes. And then the last 2 are wants. I will keep asking for a district-wide music teacher. I'd like to bring band back, but we also can, I think I mentioned last year, Jackie's able to have chorus all year long because of the way her building is set up. I had chorus until middle of January. Now my music teacher's over at Army Hill, and so we won't have chorus. We were able to get a district-wide elementary teacher, saying that we could use that person to cover Jackie's needs for general music. Trying to think of a way to start sneaking these folks in. Where you're also paying extra for the music teacher at Army Hill for one extra class. That would be covered as well. So we could start by having chorus in all 3 buildings, and then at least at 1 grade level, I would suggest 4th grade, start having band at either 4th or 5th grade to start. And then I promised Ms. O'Shea, so I'm breaking my promise. I promised Ms. O'Shea last year, or advised her that once I got the music teacher, I would start asking for a librarian. I started asking for a librarian for a variety of reasons. One is all 3 elementary schools are really at a loss. I mentioned this to the folks that are on the budget committee. I'm on the Capital Region BOCES library board, crazy, right? Because I haven't had a librarian in 15 years now. But the bad thing for you is I see all the things a librarian could do to move our building. When I started here, we had 1 librarian in 3 elementary schools. I was promised that that would build up 35 years ago, and instead 15 years ago, we lost our. That for me was a crisis, but we also had bigger things to do. I really want to start having a conversation with what librarians can do with us. You all asked me when I showed you all the books that we had called last year, what are you doing to fill your library? Well, I'm making it up as I go along. We should have somebody. But moving like that to infill the library, I'd love to have a professional that was in there helping me look at what our needs are. But there's so much more librarians can do. I'm actually crafting a letter to the folks that I have to work with at the state for being on the list. Right, when we talk about being on the list, we're already planning for next year. What are the things that we have to do to try to get us on the list? And so we talk about AIS folks. We're a school without a librarian. A librarian would help us improve our ELA scores dramatically. Things that library services can offer us.
Any, not yet. Any questions for Mr. Burke? So I do want to, and I know the comments, I just want to make one comment though to all 3 of you and all 3 of you, yes, all 3 of you and your building leadership teams. And I think Stacy can echo the sentiments. I mean, these were very in-depth, thorough discussions, solution focused, the principals and teachers really working together to talk about, okay, we're doing really good work. How can we make it even better? And we went away from, all of the meetings just so impressed. So I just need, Stacy, you said the same thing.
Absolutely.
So just.
Can I just ask your slides for your needs? It's not prioritized, it's just, an overall. I think it says something that, all of your staff that had contributed to, say that the climate in your buildings is positive and, the professionalism and relationships they have mean something to them. I think there's something to be said for that, as, you know, you look at this and you feel like, wow, we've got some work to do, and it's hard after just hearing what Stacy had to say. So thank you for taking the time to put this together.
So I do want to mention before turning, and thank you very much. Can we give them a round of applause? So I wanted to mention just a couple things. You heard substitutes come up, substitutes. So we are having conversations that we will, conversations that we'll continue with, and then have some discussions about possibilities with the board. I mean, one thing that came up in needs assessments was potentially increasing the substitute pay for our retired teachers. The teachers that have committed to daily work. Another thought was looking at ways to attract our permanent subs. We used to, and Jacqueline and Mark both been very fortunate this year in terms of having permanent subs. Not all of our buildings do, and that includes secondary. So ways to look at models that might help, incentivize that. So we are in the process of putting some things together that I can share, but I did want to let you know, that did not come up just at elementary. It was at every needs assessment, middle and high as well. So.
Was there any conversation or discussion about incentivizing, obviously we don't want teachers here when they are not well. And it sounds to me, some of it is that PD time of being able to pull out. So it sounds like two different problems, right? If the teacher's physically not in the building because they are absent, or if they need to have flexibility to be able to get the PD and support that they need to do their jobs and do it well. So I'm just curious if you have talked about both sides of that. We have talked about different things like our grow your own programs where, as educators, we're looking at future educators and what does that mean? Is it a classroom coverage piece where maybe we can utilize, some of our student population who is interested in teaching? I don't know what that looks like, or, if there's some sort of credit bearing, that we could provide at the high school, just to kind of help support some of these PD opportunities, especially when we're looking at a very difficult budget year.
We've had some discussions about the level of education required for substitutes. Right now, we require an associate's degree. We have in the past have had really strong college students finishing a year, that could, and again, it's always on a case-by-case basis, but who could be substitutes. We've had strong teacher aides who have then moved into, attending college that have done that before. So we're looking at that side with the qualifications as well. And we're going to have some further conversations with Laura and Jen, but to see, that's a good point. How can we utilize some of our students? Okay, Stacy.
Right. So on tonight's agenda is the proposition for the final piece of the existing capital reserve. So in 2018, the voters authorized the establishment and permission to fund $5 million for a capital reserve over a 10-year period. So the first project that we had for that was the middle school roof and the Harmony Hill boiler. So that was $1 million. The next piece was to fund the current capital project that is in phase 2 right now. So $2 million of that total project was funded through the capital reserve. And so this is the last $2 million. It's been funded for the full 5 at this point. And these are items that came up through the capital project that are needed. We have had Turner run projections to make sure that it would fit within the $2 million budget. They're confident that that is the case. So when CSR and Turner met with us last, they talked about this during their presentation, but just for a refresher, so improvements to the external lights on the campus of Harmony and the high school. So that entire campus, any of the lights that are damaged or dim would be repaired. We had a couple that came down as well, so they would be replaced. And then we have the auditorium lighting. So you'll remember 2 years ago, we thought we might do this through a capital outlay, and the estimates were 5 times what we had budgeted. So we weren't able to do it through that means. So instead, we updated the curtains in the auditorium, and we had the stage refinished instead. So this would be an upgrade of the auditorium lighting. That is a health and safety issue. We did have the current electrical contractors change the bulbs. We had some bulbs. So they went up and they changed the bulbs that we had. But again, it's a health and safety, so that's a priority. The construction of a storage shed. So on tonight's agenda as well, we went out to bid for the pole vault equipment. And there's other equipment that we have purchased through the capital project for the turf field. So we're going to need somewhere to store this equipment so that they can live their full life expectancy, right? And they're not subject to the wear and tear of weather in the winters here. So that's also a need. It's also taking up prime real estate inside the high school. So it would open up those spaces as well. And then enhancing the cafeteria courtyard and creating a space for external classrooms right out of the cafeteria space. So that would be great for our students. It's something that is near and dear to my heart as well as Miss Tarlow's. And then we have the construction of 2 outdoor walk-in coolers, one for the Abram Lansing School and one for the middle school. And so, as we've talked about many times, there's a lot of freestanding coolers that are taking up space. There's not enough space inside the cafeterias for the students. We're looking at furniture options. I'm waiting on some designs from CSR for those upgrades to happen outside of this, but having that storage, it would improve actually the lunch program because they'd have access to the products as far as prepping lunch. And if they run out of something, they wouldn't be dependent on it coming from the high school as a hub. So it's going to improve the actual program. And then it'll also open up space so that we can have brighter and more space for the kids in the cafeterias. So that's on tonight's agenda, and that would be a third proposition on the actual ballot. So we would have the budget, we would have the seats for the board members, and then we would have this third proposition, which gives us the authority to expend the $2 million on those items.
Thank you. Any questions?
Before I go on to upcoming events, I just have a few other brief items. I don't know if you've mentioned if you notice that the Johnston clock is here. It does need a pendulum repaired. Joe Netto has said that that should be done Wednesday or Thursday. This clock was in the Johnston mansion, and I've heard it's a rare Howard Hall clock. We are going to do some work on the history of the clock and then share that information, with the students here. I do really want to thank Joe for coordinating, but I also need to thank Jason Cribbs, our head day custodian, and Clive Lamont, our groundskeeper, because they were instrumental in helping there were movers, but it was the ice snowstorm, and so they assisted, both the library and the district in terms of making sure everything was cleared so the clock could be moved. So I do want to thank them publicly. And then also,
Can I just say, I'd like to also, the fact that the librarian from the Cohoes Public Library reached out to us. I didn't know it was there. I'm not sure if anybody else knew it was there or that it belonged to the school district. And without him reaching out to us, I don't think we would have this beautiful work of art here in our presence. So
thank you.
thank you.
Yeah. And then also on the agenda in a little bit, it's Dr. Mark Pitterson, who is our interim middle school, being approved tonight, but has been working as our interim middle school principal. He joined us even earlier than he had originally said he would. So I want to thank him. And I know you've already had a staff meeting on yesterday, and you're doing a full school assembly tomorrow before the students leave. So we just want to welcome you to the Cohoes team and thank you.
Thank you.
So upcoming events, early dismissal, one thing, National Honor Society induction, March 18th. It is on the calendars, but I'll have Laura reach out with particulars and we'll put that on the calendar too. So you'll be able to see that. And it didn't make this slide because it's after our next board meeting, but March 20th is our middle school exhibition night. So we are really looking forward to that as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll just move on to the agenda portion of our evening. Does anyone on the board have any items on tonight's agenda they would like to discuss? The only thing I wanted to bring up was 10B, just wanted to give, I don't know, Shay, a moment we had talked about the donation from Brookfield, just a brief explanation for that donation, understanding. Yeah, I'll just let you.
Okay. So over the summer, there were discussions with Capital Region BOCES in terms of Brookfield providing monies to them to then have our students be able to participate in this, green energy class with this specific vendor. And then what happened in the fall is that I got notified about that discussion and then got notified that BOCES could not support that. So at that point in time, the vendor was already committed to, so we needed to work out another method, and so Brookfield donated directly to the district.
So we're accepting a very generous donation, but it is already spent money. That was already authorized prior to, so, I mean, $10,000 is nothing to,
Right.
take lightly, so really thanking them for contributing towards our green team initiatives, and, thank you to you for making it happen, because it wouldn't otherwise, because of the involvement transferring the funds, so thanks very much. Anything else on the agenda from the board? Anything from the community on agenda items? Okay, just note of old business. We had conversations about the indoor track. Communication has went out to those folks who have reached out to us. Thank you to Superintendent O'Shea and our security team for coming up with a plan. So residents can reach out to the district.
They can reach out to Matt Lumbumber to arrange, a sign, and they can register on Family ID. It's also, if it's not, it should be by tomorrow on our website. I didn't check. What I'll do by the end of the week is get an update from Mr. Lumbumber as for how many have taken today. So
Great. And we settled on it was $10 for the,
$10.
okay, and that's just the cost of the ID itself.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Can I get a motion for the consent agenda that the Board of Education adopts the following resolutions of the March 5th, 2025 agenda, 6A through E and 7A through G?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
And a roll call?
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder? Yes. Mrs. Gendron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis?
Yes.
Mr. Droz?
Yes.
And Mrs. Geller?
Yes. Congratulations, Dr. Peterson. You've briefly been appointed at the end of the year, so thank you. Welcome. Again, thank you to Brookfield for the donation. Any comments from Board of Education members on anything that was not related to the agenda? Just wanted to mention, I did send out communication to you. We were noticed of a public meeting of the IDA regarding the Delaware Avenue pilot. I did attend the meeting. I did speak at the meeting. However, I made sure I did represent that it was Margaret Gaylor talking and not the school board president talking. I'm happy to share with, what I said with all of you if you're interested, but I wanted to be very clear that I was not representing the board. I did speak about some of the difficulties that we've had. It was very eye-opening to hear about, the amount of money a 30-year pilot actually contributes annually, especially when you think about the impact of the number of students, number of services, number of municipal dollars that are being expended to support those types of things. So the conversation revolved around the pilot itself, what the corporation stated that they were going to do for the community and what pieces and parts may not have been kind of held up on their end. So just wanted to let you know I did attend that as me. And that's it. Nothing else from anybody? No? Okay, any comments from the community on anything? Mrs. Plato, no? Oh, you look like you were wanting to say something. We don't have any policy review, so dates for future meetings are March 19th and April 9th, right here at Cohoes Middle School Library at 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:28 p.m.?
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis?
Yes.
Mr. Droz?
Yes.
And I put Snyder, but it's Mrs. Geller.
Thank you very much for coming tonight, and we'll see you next time.